the sweet sights of classic Americana. Whether you realize it or not, we have spent our entire lives as American citizens being subjected to images of what is supposedly the ideal American life. We hear that America is the place where dreams come true and the place where you can be who you want to be. We learn that America is the great melting pot of the world, where you will be accepted no matter your background or experience. We invite you in with open arms. But is this really the case? Especially now, with the tumultuous year that was 2020, we have to ask if the classic images and thoughts of what America is still hold up. From a presidential impeachment to the ramifications of a global pandemic to a pseudo-retread of 1960s-era civil rights issues and an election with record-breaking turnout, the events of 2020 alone are enough to change the perception of the entire population. With that thought in mind, I set out to ask everyday Americans for their thoughts and opinions on a variety of issues facing our country today. Some of them were a lot more vocal than others.
And that gets back to the Electoral College, which is a farce and has to be done away with immediately.
The Democrats basically, as long as my parents have been alive, and even when my grandparents were alive, they have been the party of the working class. Blue collar guy, we're going to take care of the workers, we're going to fight for the little guy because the big fat cats up in Washington and Wall Street, they don't care about you, we care about you. It's not that way anymore.
Other interview subjects were no less enthused to participate.
If you're ready.
I was born ready.
Okay.
No, I know. I'm like, is this my good side or bad side?
From children to immigrants, retirees to college students, I wanted to know what real Americans thought about our country. I wanted to know what it was like to experience a global pandemic or a Black Lives Matter protest from the people who lived through it. If anyone could tell me what modern-day America looks like, it is modern-day Americans. So, with a mask on my face and a camera in my hands, I set out to make this documentary. My name is Brennan Prince, and this is Hindsight is 2020, an American Retrospective. My first stop was to ask a very important question to some of our most important citizens, children. I wanted to know what, to them, America meant. And so, I asked.
I know.
Relax.
A couple of them were a little nervous to answer.
It's a place. It's our home and it's freedom. It is a state that is home and a city. That's all I got. It is the best place that I've ever lived in, and I love the holidays, and yeah.
Obviously, not the most astute observations, but I can't deny. I love holidays too, and America is most definitely a place, so thanks, kids. For some more nuanced observations, I opted to interview some older and more experienced subjects. A diverse array of Americans is what I found, each one shaped by their own experiences. So, what did America mean to them?
Powerful.
Okay.
Like you hold all the world in your hand. You know, like you can travel anywhere. You don't need to wait visa or something like that. All the people, they respect you around the world. America is power.
What does it mean to be an American? That's a very general question. What it means to be an American is to be able to kind of pursue your own hopes and dreams, create your own path to success or happiness, whatever, however the spirit moves you. That's what it means to me.
What it means to be an American. I think first and foremost, to be an American, you have to look at America as what it was built as. And so we do go back to where we started, and we see that America was built as this idea, this grand idea of escaping a tyrant, really, a monarch, but a tyrant, escaping that injustice that was being put on us. paying for their wars, paying for their issues that really didn't have anything to do with the colonists. So whenever you look at that and you see what we were built upon, what Jefferson, Adams, Washington, what they all wanted us to be, I think it's important that we understand to be an American is to do our best to be on the right side of history, no matter what that is.
To me, it means, well, it's the land of the free, so you have freedom to be whoever you want to be, and with that, it could come sacrifices. It's a commitment. You really have to work hard a lot of times to be who you want to be, and challenges, there might be challenges, but if you really are committed and determined, in America, you can be whoever you want to be.
Being an American is about believing in freedom. Americans aren't tied together by blood. We're hardly tied together by history. But being such a new nation, we've always had this belief that everyone should be free.
Oh, what does it mean to be an American? I think that you believe in the rights for everyone. I think that you believe in equality, no matter where you're from or religion or, whatever. I think equality and just like appreciating people in general.
And then also, there might be times when we have to help another person out, and that's all a part of, to me, being American, helping people, welcoming any type of person that's not like you, and doing whatever that you really want to do. You can do it. I kind of stumbled upon that.
One interview subject, who chose to remain nameless, said something that interested me very much. They said, there are multiple ways to describe being an American, but it all depends on your perception and personal experiences. So that made me wonder, how exactly do our backgrounds or experiences color the way we perceive our country?
Well, I guess I should give a little backstory about myself. My parents are originally immigrants from Guyana, South America. So I grew up with people who moved to America in hopes to, have that American dream, build a better home and family for themselves and their children. And I watched my mom spend countless of hours studying, spending thousands of dollars to gain her citizenship in America, because that was one thing that was very important to her. And essentially, I grew up around a lot of strong people who kind of were influenced by this term of being an American and this term of having an American dream that encouraged me to become something similar.
Yeah, it's really, I find myself here, I find it's easy to can reach your goal. Doesn't matter, I don't have any dream in my country, just I be mom and had a baby and that's it. I don't have any dream, but when I came here, I just want to go to college. I want to have my business or my work, and actually my dream was to be a police officer. And here you can, your dream came true. That's changed my mind.
Well, I've been blessed in my life. One of the things that has impacted me as a person and my views is my father's service in Vietnam. That's probably had one of the bigger impacts on me in my life is that, because he came back, had post-traumatic stress, and my parents' marriage could not survive that, and so that always was something that affected me personally. And so as I did my research into Vietnam and that war and all the lies and deceit and how our soldiers were thrown into an impossible situation by politicians, that tended to make me impact my views about America a little bit. Made me not really trusting of our institutions like maybe I should.
Mainly reading, history, philosophy. There's all kinds of stuff. There's Edmund Burke. There's John Locke. There's Enlightenment thinkers that actually influenced the founding fathers. The Federalist Papers are big ones. And even going into like the writings of Frederick Douglass, even for a different perspective on what the American dream is and what that actually constitutes, as opposed to what the practice was back then, so to speak.
Well, I've had struggles in my life, and so I've had help, and I've had to be independent, and I've had to be dependent, and throughout the years, fortunately, I've been able to experience the dream here and there, and I don't have like this huge dream, but I had several here and there, and everything that I've tried for along the way, I've been able to accomplish.
What makes me think of America in the way that I see it was the way that I was brought up. I was not a huge disadvantage like some other people are, but that doesn't mean I wasn't out there working with all the rest of them. My grandfather he started his own construction company. He had no money when he started. He's probably the biggest inspiration to me. He had no money when he started. Every day he would drive an hour and a half to New Orleans. This is before the interstate, so it was 90 all the way. So it was an hour and a half, 2 hours to get there. And he would go there every day to make sure, he was keeping up with his jobs, and he would stay over there for elongated periods of time, being away from his family. And eventually he was starting to get more and more contracts with all these people. So he really was able to build himself up, and he was able to build a strong and reputable business around here. And I believe something like that is in essence, the American dream of not having much at all, but really finding your way, doing something you like, and then just being pushed and pushing yourself. That's how I came to see the American dream.
I was a kid when the Twin Towers fell. And then when I got a little older and I decided to join the military, the idea that freedom wasn't just this guaranteed thing, that freedom was something that everyone should have, but it wasn't something that was going to be there if we didn't fight for it. But I think that it's really easy to forget that a lot of people in a lot of other places haven't experienced the freedoms that we have. And I think that growing up and joining the military and going to these other countries and seeing these people who have nothing and wanting just the barest of freedoms that we take for granted really played into that.
I think growing up poor. And so for me, the idea of security versus wealth was important, and being content, because there were a lot of tumultuous events in my life growing up that just made me feel like this instability and not knowing what was going to happen next, and then being able to have that control and making decisions for myself and feeling the stability and the evenness in my life. So I would definitely say my childhood mostly. And then as far as like seeing people as equals, and my mom's an immigrant, so I think I'm more open-minded about the idea that the American dream is for everybody, not just certain people. So I think that has a lot to do with how I view the American dream.
From national tragedies, wars, and growing up in less fortunate circumstances, we have all had some event happen in our lives that influence the way we live, think, and feel about our country. We all have different ideas about how we want to live our own American dreams. But in a modern America, what does the American dream look like? Throughout the years, the American dream has had many definitions. In the late 1800s, the American dream was manifest destiny, westward expansion, and spreading the gospel of America to the territories out there. But to modern Americans, what is the American dream? How do we define it?
When I think of the phrase American dream, I often think of, the white picket fence house in a suburban neighborhood, and you have 2 children, and you're living the dream of being comfortable where you are.
The American dream has always been freedom, whether that's freedom against tyranny, freedom to exist, freedom to love who you want. Everyone's always chasing freedom. That's what being American comes down to.
Well, the American dream is that, the ability of a person to follow their heart, follow their passion without having other people force them into certain areas. That's what it is to me.
The American dream is almost a motivation for people. The American dream is maybe something that's not necessarily tangible, and I think that the American dream for people is a tool for motivation. I think it's everyone who wants to come here and achieve the American dream. I think it's something that represents hard work. I think it's something that says you can do it. I think that's America being the good person in the world and saying, put our arm around your shoulder because you can do it. You can go out there and you can achieve if you work hard enough. Not saying that there aren't people who are at a steeper disadvantage, because there are, and I acknowledge that, just like a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, it's a motivational phrase.
The American dream is just the natural, inherent longing within the human spirit for freedom and liberty.
To me, I think contentment with finding what I want, my passions, and being able to follow them and being content with my life, whatever that is. Because I think everybody's dream is different. Some people are more focused on the idea of wealth, but for me it's more the idea that I have the freedom to choose what makes me happy. And sure, everybody wants to make more money, but I don't think that's necessarily like the crux of the American dream. It's the possibilities. So for me, it's being content and not feeling restricted.
The American dream to me is kind of, I think, is somewhat been co-opted and it's kind of manufactured. Most people look at the American dream in terms of materialism. It's kind of a product of Madison Avenue and advertisers and retailers. But like everything in this country seems to be a commodity, something to buy or sell, which to me is very unseemly. Because once something is for sale, it's like love. What do you call a person who sells love, right?
The American dream, unanimously, seems to be the pursuit of comfort, happiness in your life, and the freedom to live your life the way you want to without interference. But what does it look like when something uncontrollable comes along to stop you from living that dream? On March 12th, 2020, American life all but came to a standstill. Disney World closed its doors, movie theaters sat empty, restaurants, stores, and other businesses had to find out how to operate in the world of a global pandemic. All of this was well documented, but what did it look like to the average American? How did they live their lives, and how were they affected?
Actually, the first month, it was terrible. I get bad anxiety, because it's something crazy happened. We don't know what's going on, but the government and federal, they help us and give us money to can survive, and that's a really amazing blessing. I appreciate that because no one around the world is doing that. Can you imagine you just sitting home and you take your money and more what you pay was working, and really it's amazing. I like that.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm fairly solitary. I have a small circle of friends and family, so it didn't affect me like it did a lot of social butterflies, so to speak. I have a very, very small circle of friends and family. So what disappoints me about the entire situation with COVID is how people never took it seriously from the start and thought it was a hoax, and it revealed a very troubling aspect of American society is that we're quick to follow conspiracy theories and crazy things, and it reveals people that are out of touch with reality, so to speak, and science and things. So that it's been quite a disappointment to me in the nation's response to the whole thing. No organization from the top all the way. You can't just delegate every man for himself. You have to have a coordinated approach to, okay, we all got to get on the same page. It's kind of like during World War II, and there's been times in our history where all Americans, we have to put our feelings aside and do what's best for the whole. And Americans we're so individualistic, we sometimes lose sight of surrendering the me for the we, and this was a time that we needed to do that. Like the whole, and I don't have my mask on here because we're outside, but I've never had a problem wearing masks. I don't like it, but I do it. And the fact that, it's been turned into a political football, and I find that extremely disappointing. That if me wearing a mask helps, society and helps us get beyond this, it's in some way, in a quicker, more expedited way, then I'll be glad to do it. So I hate that this has been so politicized, frankly, because it shows me that nothing is beyond being politicized in this country, and somehow we're gonna have to get over that. And I don't see that happening anytime soon.
I might not be the greatest person to ask that question to, because I'm an essential worker. So a lot of my personal day-to-day life didn't change. Some of my processes changed. Have to get on to people for not washing their hands and not wearing masks. But overall, it wasn't a huge effect for me or for my family because we're all a bunch of essential workers. That being said, with the pandemic, just like I think any major catastrophic event, I think that I've seen a lot of people helping other people. And I don't know if that's just a side effect of the privilege of growing up where I've decided to spend my life. But I've noticed that down here, if you look for it, you find a lot of good.
I'm pretty sure that COVID in general affected all of us negatively at first because this definitely is a fast-paced world and country. And suddenly everything just stopped. And we were forced to sit back and, follow these extreme guidelines that we had never even thought of having to follow. And it kind of opened my eyes to how much work we have to do as a country to, kind of prepare for situations like this because we have the power to do so. But personally, I feel like we could have done so much more as a country, especially comparing to how other countries have dealt with the same situation. We definitely have not used our legislation correctly in many aspects of the virus itself.
Well, it affected me it was scary, I've never really experienced anything like this before, along with everybody else. I still was an essential worker, so I still got to go out and work, but I was scared the whole time because I had allergies and I was afraid, I hope I'm not, getting anything or giving anything. So it was very stressful, especially in the very beginning, before it was mandatory to wear a mask and everything. And what was the second part of the question?
How did it affect the way you viewed our nation?
Made me have even more disappointment of the administration in particular. I could see such a division of thoughts on some people agreeing, that it is a real thing, some people not. Some people didn't agree with wearing masks, some people didn't. So it was a lot of uncertainty going on that really was very stressful, very stressful. That's what I'd like to say about it.
Well, my job kind of fell through just a little bit, so that was a little bit strange at the time. My show kind of got cut in half, as you well know.
I do well know. In March, I made my stage debut acting in an original show with this playwright. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. But, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to cut our run short. I and my fellow castmates, like many others, had to give up something we were really looking forward to, something we were passionate about, in order to help curb the spread of COVID-19.
But personally, for me, 2020 has been a very good year for me in my personal life. I'm with a wonderful woman, things are going incredibly great on that front, and it's just kind of been interesting because other than career-wise stuff, my life has been going pretty well, as it seems like the entire world is in flames around me, so it's been an interesting experience.
So, for me, there's initially a lot of fear because we didn't know. We didn't know the ramifications of this disease. And so I think initially a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of anxiety about like, how was this going to play out? How would this affect my life in the long run? And then of course, the fear of the economy crashing and, what would that mean for my job and different things like that. So I think initially fear, but then it became this like political, and I couldn't wrap my head around the politicizing of this. And so it caused such a divide, which there already was, but I think it just widened that gap in between these political groups and agendas and everything. It's how can you turn something like this into a political ploy? And so it was really disheartening to see how it was politicized versus let's take care of the people, let's make sure the people are safe. And it wasn't about you and your political beliefs, it was about the health and well-being of our community.
It affected my life greatly, like everyone else's, especially me because I'm a college student. So in one email, my spring break became my summer break. Most influential email I'll ever probably receive. So with that, we were sent home. We were all isolated, which was, of course, what we needed to do anyway. We were sent home, we were isolated, there's nothing we could do. But I really think that throughout that quarantine, the country did change. I don't think the response was handled well, but I think the country, before George Floyd, the country changed for the better. You saw people giving out, helping hands, doing whatever they could, donating what they could, making sure they were all doing their part to stay inside. So I think for the most part we became more unified, if anything, because we were all going through the shared experience. And those shared experiences are really what build bonds between people, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we did change for the good before all the protests kind of broke out.
One interview subject put it this way: I was worried every day. I was worried that I was exposed, worried about friends and family who wouldn't take the virus seriously. My family and I had to seriously reevaluate how we lived our lives. But no matter what we do, we can only control so much. That sentiment right there. We can only control so much. It's right, and it's not only relevant when talking about the pandemic. At the end of May, the nation watched as George Floyd and Breonna Taylor became the latest victims of police brutality, dying at the hands of police officers. For years, we have heard of the issues of systemic racism and police brutality, two of the biggest issues facing Black people and people of color in our nation. But what did these issues look like to the people who hear about them every day? Have we become desensitized to them? Or are we aware of the problems that must be fixed? At the end of May and going into the beginning weeks of June, we saw protests break out over the issues of police brutality and systemic racism across our nation. How did that affect you, and how did it affect the way that you viewed our nation?
Actually, it doesn't affect me because I will tell you something. I had the police in my country and the police here, and really I love the police anywhere. But like here, they really kind and respect the people. But sometimes, like I don't say George he's bad or he's acting bad. No, no, like it's not mean one person he's bad. Like all the police it's bad. Like maybe he had the mental stuff. Like or maybe he had a problem. That police, or this is their job. Because like I saw sometimes like police stop people and say, he asks them nicely, can I have your license? And they acting rude, like, what you doing? Like, whoa, it's not your, whatever was they talking about. Like, I be mad because you have to respect that this man, he's doing his job. And he's, sometimes, like, you feel the police, he's in risk or, like, because the drug or whatever was they doing, like, the people say crazy.
It didn't really, my views have not changed because what maybe you hopefully could have done is put them into historical context. I mean, this is like a rerun of the '60s, and to me, it's just frustrating that we've made such little progress, and I feel like currently we have taken numerous steps backwards because of certain people in leadership positions, and I think in some ways things have gotten better on the surface as far as race relations are concerned. There's still institutional problems that we just are unwilling to face. White people are unwilling to they don't want to hear it. And I saw a certain politician recently say that the United States, it's a lie to call the United States a racist country, and I just have to disagree. I mean, all of us are racists. I don't agree with. There's a lot of institutionalized racism, especially within the justice system and the way that policing. And I don't like saying that. I don't like to acknowledge that fact at all. I wish that was not true. And something has to be done. But we're living in just such polarized times. It takes a little bit of a diving into American history and trying to imagine yourself as being somebody who is black and what it's like to be black in America. And I don't think none of us know that.
Being Black in this country definitely has its challenges. And once it broke out, I am actually honored to say that I had the ability to participate in such protests. I visited and participated in a couple community peaceful protests during that time when it first really hit media, because I, being like a communications major, I felt like it was important to show my face, even though we have the mask, obviously. But I felt the need to show my presence because that essentially does a lot more than people often think. Just as simple as picking an interest or picking up a conversation with people you never thought you'd have a conversation with about police brutality and about racism and about systematic oppression. By seeing these faces on the internet day after day, it kind of does a lot more than we think it does, especially concerning the political climate we are in right now.
Well, I think for a lot of people who are my age, maybe your age too, I don't know, we remember Ferguson. Ferguson is kind of the blueprint for people around our age, because for me, I was alive for the LA riots after Rodney King and with the OJ stuff, but I was so young that I wasn't really within the culture, so to speak. It doesn't really rock me in any way, to be honest. Throughout the entire arc of history, even American history, the size of it is historic, but the tenor and tone of it is very familiar. This is very kind of late 60s, early 70s, because, I mean, those were times. President got shot, and then his brother got shot, and then MLK got shot. So it could be worse. I don't think it's really good right now, but I think that it's going to go into a positive direction overall.
Personally, I became more aware, I believe, which I was aware, but now that it's been brought to this extent, I'm very aware, as everyone else is, about the system that's going not in a great direction as far as our public servers or our police officers are handling their business. Not to say that all the police officers are bad, because I truly don't believe that. I really do believe in our police, all of them. I really do, but I also believe that we really did meet a bump in the road as far as things are concerned, because people were really starting to speak out. And that's what our system was based off of anyway, wasn't it? It was based off of, we live in a republic, a democracy. It's all about us, and us speaking up about it has been a great thing. However, like a lot of people, and this will contradict with a lot of people, but we have the right to protest. But after these protests, I have seen a sharp decline, maybe, in the unity that we were feeling only 2 or 3 months ago. I really have seen that, and all the riots and things that are going on, I don't agree with them. I know that you have to make a point somehow, but if you look back through history of some of the greatest peace leaders of all time, you'll see that it was exactly through that with peace. And I understand that you have to kind of make a point with it, but I just don't necessarily agree in that way, because we are destroying businesses, we're destroying our own economy, we're destroying those people who want to achieve the American dream. The former police chief in St. Louis, who was murdered while defending his friend's store, really sticks out to me. That was one of the I remember whenever that happened, actually, because I have friends in St. Louis, and I was making sure they were okay, and they would tell me, like, this police chief died. I said, what happened? He said, well, he got the call, and he was just going to make sure that everything was all right around his friend's store, and they wanted to make sure, and he was killed by rioters. Well, I don't see that. That's not an equivalence of what they want. I personally don't believe that. I think that in order to achieve it, I think they have to rally more. I really do think they have to rally, but I don't think the amount of violence that goes into it is needed at all. And with that, we have seen a huge divide, We see it every day, and it seems like it only grows every day, because that's just how it is. And with the news media evolving, with the use, they are evolving with their means of broadcast within the past 10 years to huge heavy-set cameras, and they need satellite trucks. So now it's just you can get anything on a phone. And I think with their new technology we're seeing it a lot more, and we are. And I think there needs to be a stop to it, but I don't think that's the way to go. I think that at the end of the day, all it really does is aim to divide us, and that's just something we don't need. Like I said prior, we became so unified with the coronavirus going on that it only lasted a month or two, really.
So I knew that there was racism, and I know people that are black that have told me some stories. And so with me, even though I don't care for violent protests, there weren't as many, I think, as there were civil protests. I think the violent protests, these people are truly trying to make an impact, and they're making an impact. I just hope it doesn't counteract what they're trying to do, but I think it's going to really bring the situation to a head. I really do, and it might take some more going, but I think it's up the ante a little bit. It's shifted everything, and I think as far as the nation, thinking of how I feel about the nation doing, I think it just shows how we're really good people. Everybody has everything in them, but I think most of us are really good, and we're trying to stand up for what we believe in. And I want to look past the end of the tunnel and see that all the stuff that's going on will end up being positive in the long run?
I think it was very difficult for me because my husband's a police officer, and it made me afraid for him. It made me afraid for all police officers and in our community and around the nation, the ones that have done the job with honor and integrity and have never done anything out of line. It made me afraid that they would be targeted, and so there was a little bit of fear. And for a lot of the anger and the unrest, I understand it. I really do, and I know that there is a problem with racism. I think there's a problem in law enforcement with the lack of training, and I think some of the things that they're calling for are not the answer. So like the defunding, I'm like, so you defund them so there's less training and there are fewer officers. And so now they're in a bigger predicament than they were before, and the things aren't going to get better. And saying that other people can do these jobs, other people can't, because you're telling them they're going to go into these situations and not have a way to defend themselves. So I don't know. There was just so much understanding and so much compassion and empathy, because I've seen it, because I've experienced it growing up, and people knowing that my mom was an immigrant and asking me weird questions like what are you? And I'm like, what? I'm a person. I don't know what, like as a kid I didn't understand. I'm like, what do you mean, what am I? So I did get the questions, and I understand that, being different, being targeted as different, as far as racially, can be unfortunate, and people see you as a problem, or kind of distance themselves and are not open to you. So I do understand that, and I wholeheartedly agree with the peaceful protests. For all the anger that any group would feel, I can't get behind the tearing down your own community, and I can't get behind the violence.
So the protests that erupted this year, I think were a long time coming. I was actually working in Bagram, Afghanistan when the Ferguson protests were happening. And I think ever since then, it's just kind of been inevitable. I had somebody ask me while I was working over there if it was dangerous, and I'm like, no more dangerous than being at home, if we're being perfectly honest. But I think that with the protest and the violence, even beyond that, I think that a lot of people are calling for change. They're calling for police departments to be more transparent. They're calling for higher uses of body cams, and I think that they're actually being heard. People are making changes, whether it's through legislation or through the departments themselves changing policy. Ending no-knock raids for Breonna Taylor. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that there are positive changes being made, and I just hope that the people making those changes are continuing to get the support that they need to continue doing so.
There seems to be a recurring theme here. Most of the interview subjects chose to acknowledge the problems facing our nation and recognize that we need to do something to fix them. Many recognize the need to be seen by any means necessary, but couldn't condone violent riots or violent acts, a sentiment shared by many. The important thing to remember here is that they recognize that there are problems in our country that we need to fix. Not only to end police brutality, combat systemic and institutional racism, but to come together and heal the political and personal divides in our country, and come together to fight the still ongoing pandemic. But did the people in charge of fixing those problems feel the same way? It is undeniable that our elected leaders have chosen a course of, let's call it, inaction. Something can be said for not wanting to intervene in the lives of free citizens, but many argued that anything must be done, So how did those who were affected by these still unfolding historic events feel about the course of action that our leaders chose to take? So as these events, the pandemic and the protests, unfolded, our current administrations from the local level all the way up to the federal level have not taken a particularly strong stance on fighting for the equality of all people or on protecting the lives of American citizens. So how does that make you feel?
I guess I would have to ask the question of, are we talking about the Trump administration, or are we talking about, what are we talking about?
More so the Trump administration, more so the GOP, people who are in power right now, and also, local leaders that we've seen, like our governor instituting such a late mask mandate.
Oh, like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I might be the wrong person to ask about the COVID stuff. I kind of had a feeling that COVID was not going to be a horrible, awful, terrible thing in the beginning. And the CDC has found that it has an extremely low mortality rate, and most mortalities were for people under 65 had, I think on average, 2.8 comorbidities with it. So I'm not exactly sympathetic to the giant shutdown and mask mandates. Now, I do believe that since people over 65 are vulnerable, that they should be protected and whatnot, and so I'll wear a mask around people like that, or if a business requires a mask, I'll respect the business and do such, but I'm not really sore about having a late mask mandate, because I kind of had a feeling that this is just something that all of us were going to get at one point or another. I think I already have had it back in December, actually, which that's a whole different story. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the Trump thing, are you talking about just COVID?
Both the response to COVID and the way that the administration has responded to the protests.
Okay. I think that with the Trump administration, in terms of COVID, I think that he did as much, if not more so, than the other party, to be perfectly honest. He shut down travel to China, which was called xenophobic at the time, but he did it anyway, even though his advisors told him not to. I think that was a good move. He shut down travel from Europe. He basically went ahead and said, okay, with the lockdowns and everything, is it on a perfect timetable? No. In terms of the racial equality, and I guess with the protests and everything, are we talking about more so of taking measures against police departments, about handling the protests getting violent? What are we? You have a specific thing in mind?
In any way that you want to take it, just how you feel you should respond.
Well, I think the elephant in the room is that the narrative is that Trump is a racist bigot who doesn't care about black people. To quote Kanye about George Bush, which that's kind of funny considering the current events. But I don't think that Trump is racist. And so, I mean, the man has been awarded awards from the NAACP. Black unemployment was at an all-time low during his administration. He's had black leaders come to the White House and talk to them constantly. He's never had a problem with black people throughout his entire life, and he has not been shy about his life. So I'm not so sure about that. I think that whenever it comes with police departments, it's actually, funny enough, it's not within his purview. It's not within his scope of power. What's so strange about him is that he's made out to be a tyrant, but he's been sticking to federalism strangely strongly, like more so than any other president that I've seen in my lifetime. But I think that it really is, he doesn't want to overreach. That's why he hasn't been sending the National Guard right away with things. And the only reason that he does is whenever it's actual federal buildings that are under attack. Because it's honestly not within his purview in order to tell cities or states what they can and cannot do whenever it comes to those things. But I don't think that there is a problem within the administration of why that's happening. I think there are other possible things going on. So yeah.
This is a really heavy question, but I have always been one who's passionate about having, equal opportunity for everyone, and seeing our legislation not doing all that it's capable of definitely for me takes a toll on, me as an upcoming adult, because eventually I hope to become one of those people who have the ability to, you know, attack these issues and help our country as a whole. And it's almost disheartening to see our political climate today because it feels like we're more so used to disagreeing that we can't agree on simple things like social justice and human rights. And it's all, oh, you're such a leftist, or you're such a conservative. It's never, okay, we don't see eye to eye, but we can come to terms on this. And that's definitely one thing that I think as a country will essentially be the fall of us if we don't contact that and like establish that we need to fix that problem.
I don't think so, because I feel like we had a lot and they give a lot and working hard to give us a lot. Doesn't matter if you have a green card or a citizen or whatever, but like the people, they had too much freedom and they don't understand how they use it was a right way, you know?
Just frustrated. The response to COVID has been just negligible. I mean, negligent, I should say. Just really, really bad. And where you had, we could have mobilized the resources of the country, got money to people who are out of work. Just a lot of things could have been done, and we'd be beyond it right now. And the reason why it's still lingering is because the response has been so dismal. If you look at the response that other advanced countries have had compared to the United States, it's frankly quite embarrassing. And we've really embarrassed ourselves. I don't know how, I know a lot of Americans say, I don't care what everybody else thinks. But it's, the United States used to be kind of who everybody else looked to. And we're certainly losing that now, especially with this COVID. I just hope, I really want to get beyond this. Nobody wants to get back to normal more than I do. It was going to take some sacrifice in the beginning, and we were willing to make those sacrifices. If we'd have responded to World War II like this, we'd be speaking German or something right now, Japanese. Yeah.
Oh, it's very disappointing, and it's very telling of where the administration is standing on race and different people. That's just the bottom line right there.
This is kind of a difficult question to answer, mostly because philosophically what it comes down to is what you expect the role of the federal government to be, and at what point are they overstepping their boundaries. And I'm not sure that the current administration would end up doing more good than they could potentially be doing more harm in regards to interfering with the personal freedoms of others. I think that the larger the government grows, normally the more red tape and more problems that tend to arise. And so, while I can definitely understand that they're not, there can definitely be some criticisms as to what they're doing, I think less might be more in this case.
It makes me feel like the divisiveness in the country is only going to get greater.
It makes me think our divisiveness is only going to get greater. As more events happen in our country, and whether it is necessary or not, we see people choose to take one side of the issue or the other and refuse to see the other side's point of view. This is a problem we have to overcome, and quickly, if we hope to remain a united nation. One interview subject said, "Given the current state of our country and its leadership, it makes me feel that everything I learned growing up was a lie. It made me feel like they were trying to give me pride in something that didn't exist." As we said every morning before school, we are one nation under God, indivisible. Yet we are apparently not indivisible. And in 2020, we saw that more than ever. As the year drug on, we came closer and closer to a very tense election season. Both candidates began to pick their chosen issues as Election Day inched closer. And as the election drew to a close and I was interviewing my subjects, The race drew many comparisons to 2016 and the election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Many felt then, and still felt now, that neither party put up a good candidate. So I wanted to know how an outgoing administration can influence who we vote for. In the case of the 2016 election, it was the Obama administration.
Okay, like I feel like when Obama was the president, it was like better life because he made a lot for the American, and it was a quiet life, and we had cheap insurance. Everyone has an insurance, but when it's Trump came, like it's making ups and downs. He just wanted like just business and high price, and I don't have insurance 2 years now.
So you have to understand that around every election year, you do get there's a fire lit under everybody. Because that's what we are supposed to do. That's our constitutional responsibility, is to vote. A lot of people take it really seriously, and a lot of people don't. But it turns out the people who do take it seriously, even though they are a majority, unfortunately, they're the loudest voices. And so that's what everyone's going to have to pay attention to. So whenever we are in the back half of 2016 and the Obama administration after 8 years is leaving the White House, people are really fighting for what's about to happen, because you have two candidates. And 2016 was such an odd year, because really, at least in my opinion, you were trying to pick the lesser of two evils. So whenever you're put in that situation, yes, people grab and complain about what we have now, but what could we have had? How would that have went? We'll never know. So whenever Obama's leaving the White House and Democrats are pushing hard to get their girl elected, and Republicans are pushing hard to get their guy elected, I think we saw, just like the split we were talking about earlier, we saw a huge split. Political scientists saw a huge split, because you are starting to see all of these, like what Trump likes to call the silent majority. You do see these people coming out of the woodwork. And it's not your average conservatives who are like, yeah, let's support our candidate. It's these people who you normally don't hear about coming out and saying, yeah, we support this guy. And that was strange. It was just like, so he used the fear-mongering tactic. He did use it, which is pretty commonplace in politics. It's fair, it's Republicans are up there, it's like, we don't want these guys in office because this will happen. And Democrats are up here, it's like, we don't want these guys, and slippery slope, whatever. But we saw that, and he just connected. He connected with all these like modern day people. Not saying he won by a huge amount, but he still was able to get that advantage. And it was just so interesting to see that in 2016, to see where we were going to go and like where we were going to shift.
I think that both of the candidates chosen for the 2016 election made me really miss having someone that I wanted to vote for. It was definitely an eye-opening election for me, in that I think that it really highlights the problems and the dangers with having a two-party system, two-party being relative. And I think that the Republicans choosing a very extreme candidate in views of the left, and the Democratic Party kind of seeing how far that they can push their envelope was very telling in the political polarization that's continuing to happen to this day. So the previous administration, I think, really tried to sell itself on being more moderate, and I think that mask has kind of fallen off both parties.
I feel like Obama was very personable and down to earth, and what we got as choices was so contrary of both parties. It was so contrary. I don't. It kind of set both of them up for failure. I think, like coming off of Obama, because even if you didn't agree with everything that he did, and there's no way, whether you're Democrat or Republican, that you're going to agree with everything that a president does, whether they're of the same party or not. So even if you didn't agree with him, I think people still on both sides had respect for him, and I think some of the flack that he got from Republicans had to do with the fact that he was black. I mean, I 100% believe that. So I feel like you felt like you didn't have anything to choose from. I mean, it's like this, you go from Obama to Hillary, I mean, that's all you got? That's it? And then Republicans, this is your top choice? Oh my gosh, like, what? It was just really, really disheartening. I mean, like, totally disheartening, because you're like, this is all we got.
The Obama administration made me understand exactly why Donald Trump was chosen. I didn't vote for him in 2016. Neither he nor Clinton met my minimum standards for casting a vote for somebody. But I understood exactly why. And it's because he was basically a middle finger to everything he rails against. I mean, the mainstream media, the establishment, both the Democratic and the Republican establishment as well. Because the Republican establishment, oh God, because 2008, who did you put up? Oh, you put up McCain. Nice guy, war hero. I don't deny that. I think Trump should not have called him not a war hero just because you get a Purple Heart and become a POW. He did his thing. Not a great politician. Not conservative either. Romney, same story. But the thing that was so telling about it is that the left demonized him as Hitler. Demonized McCain as Hitler, Romney as Hitler, George W. Bush as Hitler, H.W. as Hitler, Reagan as Hitler, Nixon as Hitler. Some of them were more apt for that comparison than others. I'm thinking of Nixon. But whenever you see Mitt Romney, the most milquetoast human being, he is a Triscuit of a human being. Like, he's the blandest human being you could possibly see. And he is being smeared as a racist and a bigot and Hitler with no evidence. Then they're just like, screw it, Because the Republican establishment, there's one thing that 2008 to 2016 was colored by. It's that we don't want to be called racist. If we're ever called any of those things, we got to shrink back, we got to apologize. The thing is, if you're being racist, don't be racist. I think we can all agree that racism is bad. I've yet to meet somebody who says otherwise. But whenever somebody is saying those things in order to shut you up and end the argument, and you refuse to stand your ground on principles that you actually truly believe in, then that's a problem. And so, in walks Donald Trump. People throw mud at him, but he's a mud monster. So it just kind of makes him stronger. And he just keeps going and keeps going. And so for me, that's what 2016 was.
In the end, Donald Trump won the election and ran his first term. It is true that we will never know what our country would have looked like if we had voted the other way. But as the 2020 election came close, it was time for Americans to decide. Did they want 4 more years under Donald Trump? Or was it time for a change? How did the last 4 years change people's political opinions? And how did Trump's administration affect the way people wanted to vote?
Okay, to answer that question, I would say that my political views, for the most part, have stayed the same. I know that obviously I'm still young and I still have a lot of time to formulate a lot more opinions that I don't know much about. But one thing that I would definitely say is this this political climate that we're in today has definitely encouraged me to kind of shape my career around it, which I wasn't expecting. Growing up, I always said I hate politics. Anytime anyone would bring it up, I wouldn't want to talk about it. I thought, I'm going to get in an argument if we bring it up, and I don't like arguing. But then as I get older, I'm like, okay, some things you need to talk about because if you don't talk about it, it's going to stay the same. And I'm
Exactly.
definitely one person who is not all bark and all, no bite. If I want to change something, I will get off my butt and change it.
Well, not really. I've always been fairly left of center in my politics. And I would just say my politics haven't changed, but my level of cynicism has certainly increased. That's possible. Because I'm somebody that always hopefully get discontent. That's me. And I'm cynical, but yet I want to retain a little bit of faith because you just cannot completely, you can't give yourself over to cynicism.
I would say that my views have not changed. I am a Southern Republican. That's just how I've always been. Socially, I'm liberal. Economically, I'm conservative. And I've always been that way. And it's nothing I'm scared to admit, especially as a Republican. I'm a Republican who can walk around and say, why can't gay people marry each other? You know. So really, fundamentally, no, I really haven't changed. But I mean, I think that's also because I really don't like what they're doing in D.C. anyway. I really don't like it at all. So I really don't look to them for motivation. I don't look to them to find my morals. If anything, I go back in history and look at all of the great men who have served, whether they be presidents or Supreme Court justices or congressmen, senators. That's where I kind of find myself. So I don't really. My views haven't shifted very much. I mean, if what you're asking is have my views on the president shifted, that's not what you're asking.
Not necessarily, but if you would like to go there, feel free.
So like I said, we just didn't know what we were signing up for. We didn't know what was going to happen. Well, we did, but we didn't know to the extent of what was going to happen once we gave them the nuclear football. But since then, I think that his unprecedented ways of handling, or his unprecedented ways of governing, has kind of stunted our growth. And I don't think it's a great thing, and I think that if he acted in a manner that was more respectable, I think a lot more people would like him. That's really the only thing. It's just, what is it? Foreign policy is shifted every day with the touch of a tweet button. That's just insane to me. That's crazy. It's just so, you've never seen it. I've never wanted to see that. But as a person, I think I have lost a little bit of respect for our president since 2016.
It has changed as far as my political views. I realized this. I did more liberal, more democratic views, but I always took a back seat if we had a Republican administration, and I respected it because I had no reason not to respect it. Everybody has different needs and wants, but you deal with that in a respectful way, and I never had a problem with it. So it made me realize that even if another Republican president would try to come into play, as long as he has morals and he's a leader and he doesn't lie and he brings us together, I'm for that person. I'm more for the person than I am for the views. I really am.
Strangely enough, yes. I'm trying to think of what's the best way I can put this without sounding like a crazy person. Because I would not have agreed with myself 4 years ago. The way that would change is I would actually vote for Trump at this point. Strangely enough. I never thought I would say those words because I never liked him as a person. I didn't think he was going to be a particularly good conservative politician that actually had the country at heart. I thought he had himself at heart. But honestly, things have just gone so far off the rails, And whenever we're talking about a political party that is talking about defunding police, even though they say it's about just diverting funds to other things, that's not originally what they talked about at all. Defunding the police, socialism, just, there's a long list of things. If it's between that and a barely working toaster, I'm going to pick the barely working toaster as far as I'm concerned.
I really don't think that my political views have changed that much. My feelings towards Trump have changed because initially I was like, okay, I mean, Hillary's, probably orchestrated some murders, so so who do we put in there? So I didn't initially look, I thought he was an idiot and he's arrogant and, whatever, but I think that the only thing I could say that really has changed is I've realized more how unfit he is to be in political office. I mean, much less president of the United States, but any political office. So I still feel like I'm not a party person. I'm the person who's in the middle, and I have to look at both sides and see which ones really follow my own morals. My morals aren't guided by a political party, so I have my morals, and then that decides who gets my vote, and not whether they're Republican or Democrat, because I've voted both ways in all the years that I can vote. So I can't necessarily say that my political views haven't changed.
I wouldn't say that my political opinions have changed much. I've never been a down-the-ticket voter, and my values and standards really haven't been adjusted much. I couldn't then and I can't now see myself voting in a way that I think compromises my character.
One interview subject put it this way: my views haven't changed. The only thing my eyes have been open to is the fact that some people will do whatever it takes to make themselves better. It doesn't matter who they hurt or lie to in the process. This is a fact that can not only be applied to politicians, but anyone who finds themselves in a leadership position and uses that leadership to put other people down and only use them as a stepping stool on their ladder of success. But I'd come to the end of my interview process, and I still had one question that I wanted to ask. After everything we had talked about, what, to these modern Americans, does it mean to be an American?
American, you will be had the power, like I told you, and it's a dream for everyone around the world. Even the famous people and rich people in Egypt, they came here to live with their kids to have the American citizen, and to be an American, that's blessing.
I think I'd basically stick with my answer. It really is a creedal thing. It's not in your blood. It's in your soul, And I think that it's something to be cherished, because without being an American and without being proud to be an American, then what makes America such a wonderful place will become lost. And that's not just a bad thing for us, it's a bad thing for the world. Because, as I said, with the streets being paved with gold and the immigrants of the late 19th century and early 20th century, it's kind of the light of the world to a lot of people. It's the place that even if where I am is so horrible, there's still a chance. That thing is still there, and it's a dream that can be realized. And if that gets snuffed out, then the dreams and the aspirations and the hope of billions of people is going to be extinguished. And so that's what it means to be American in my book.
What does it mean to be an American? What I wanted to mean is that we love our brothers and sisters, whether they're black, Muslim, white, Asian, and I hope that, that's what I tried to put forth in my room. I was an equal. I treated everybody like an idiot, right? I didn't discriminate against anyone, right?
Yeah, we were all idiots.
And we all have to do that. Anything we do, any vocation, serve all, love all, and replace this fear with love, compassion, service, work for the good of others, put others before you. If we could just do that, we'd be better. And I think America has a tremendous potential to do that, because most people that I know are that way. They'll give you the shirt off their back, and it doesn't matter who that person is, they would do that. But sometimes our politics and things get in the way of that. We have to kind of transcend the nation's politics right now and get back to the basics, loving and serving.
I'd say being American definitely means to be able to have these conversations and to make change, because not everyone is fortunate enough to wake up in the morning and have the ability to voice their opinions. Sorry. There's so many countries. I mean, like, one Google search could show like how terrible of conditions people are in, and we're very fortunate as Americans to have the ability to wake up every day and complain about less serious things per se. And yeah.
I think it means compromise. Because talking about how I did earlier, I said it's what we were built off of. And I believe to be an American really means to have that high morality and to understand the points of view of everybody. And I believe that's compromise. I believe we don't see it anymore, not as much as we used to. It exists still. It's just not prevalent anymore. And that's something that's very sad. So what I think it means to be an American is it boils down to one word for me. It's just compromise. Because at the end of the day, we need each other. We have to live with one another. And if you're not willing to do that, we're not going anywhere. We're not progressing forward. We're not becoming the great country that everyone, thinks we are. We're going backwards. So compromise.
I'm going to come back to it means freedoms. It means being heard, having a voice. And also, I think, that you choose for you. And that whatever choices you make in your life, you have to kind of deal with it. I just feel like you have the potential in America. You have the potential to do and be anything, no matter where you come from. And I think that's one of the things that I would say. That's what it means to be American. To know that there's so many possibilities. So yeah.
Being an American means believing in freedom. It means believing that everyone should be free. And that's something that's worth fighting for.
Thank you. And there you have it. That is what it truly means to be an American in a modern-day America. It is to have conversations, make your voice heard, and to believe in a better future for all people. Do you remember the interview subject who chose to remain nameless? I believe it is important that you know that this person chose to label themselves as someone with open eyes. I hope that as we go through this next year and these next 4 years, that we can all be people with open eyes. I hope we can be people who choose to see both sides of the issue and weigh the good and the bad. I hope we will choose to come together as a country and do what is best for all people, regardless of race, sexuality, religious belief, political belief, or any other category that can be used to separate us from each other. We cannot move forward as a country until we are one nation once more. I will leave you here with the very astute words of a self-described local anarchist.
We have to kind of get beyond the political jargon and bullshit,